So it's one of those rainy days and you can't go out and, do much photography. It's not one of those rainy days where you have, great dynamics in the clouds and, there might be some light peeking through here and there. This is actually the remnants of Hurricane Dorian, which destroyed, the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas and is right now right off the Carolina coast of the United States, just wreaking havoc there. We're not going to get what I would call hurricane weather here on Delmarva, but it is one of those just, unpredictable, lingering style rains. And when you have those lingering rains that, it's just kind of off and on, and cloud cover never goes away. It's one of those times where you stay in the office and you try to get something done, on the computer or whatever you need to do. So today what I thought I'd do is I'd give you my 5 tips for editing faster in Premiere Pro for all your video work. These tips are targeting not a brand new editor in Premiere Pro, although watching the video won't hurt. These tips are more designed for the person who's been editing video for a couple years, is getting pretty good at it, and is looking to kind of make their editing process a little more efficient. If you're a professional editor, you probably already know all this. However, it never hurts to watch a video and see what someone's take is on something, so I encourage you to stick around as well. When you start editing in Premiere, it's a good idea to learn those keyboard shortcuts as quick as possible. When I first started using Premiere and I looked into doing keyboard shortcuts, I was just like, I'm never gonna be able to get all this. And it's because when you open up the keyboard shortcut screen, there's just a lot of information. It's hard to kind of take it all in and start processing it. However, as you move along as a video editor and you get more experience, you start to realize there's functions that you use all the time, like your razor, like your move, all kinds of different little edits and cuts and things that you use all the time. So the way that I have my keyboard shortcuts laid out should definitely help optimize your video editing. Inside Premiere Pro, we're gonna go up here to the Premiere Pro tab and we're gonna go to keyboard shortcuts. And this looks overwhelming when you first look at it, but don't worry. I don't use most of this. I've grouped everything that I do use on the left side of the keyboard. So what I do is my right hand is on my trackpad or my mouse and my left hand is on these keys. And the keys that I program are right here. The letter A, I set to ripple trim previous edit playhead. And you can see right here. And what you do is you just go over here and type this in. And there it is. And so you click that and you assign it to this key. If you want to assign this command to the letter A, you just go up and click A, and then it'll put a little A here for you. Before I show you what it does, I want to go ahead and show you the second letter that I program, and that's the letter S. And the letter S is ripple trim next edit to playhead. Same thing, go in here, type it in, it'll come up here, and then just click the letter S. Now let me show you what they do. Let's say you're on your timeline and what you're looking at is you want to start your clip here. You want to remove this section. Okay, so with the letter A program like we have it in the keyboard shortcuts now, I'm just going to hit the letter A and it got rid of that section. So I'll go back, hit the letter A, and it's going to remove all of this footage right here. See how it changes in light? You wouldn't want that in your clip. So right about here, let's say, I'm going to hit the letter A, and now my clip starts right where my cursor was. And same thing with the letter S now. So the letter S is for the rear end of the clip or the back end of the clip. And it doesn't matter if you're near the back or you're way up here. Like if I'm way up here and I hit the letter S, it's going to get rid of all of this. See that? So that is a wonderful, wonderful command. I use that all the time, and that is definitely my biggest tip for keyboard shortcuts. There's a few others that I have, and this is the Z, X, the C, and the V tool. And what this does is it allows me to switch between tools
very quickly rather than taking my mouse from one place on the screen to another. If I want to clear a clip, I'll just select the clip and hit Z. If I want to ripple delete a clip, then I'll just hit the letter X. If I want to go to my razor tool, I use C, and the V key will be the selection tool. This one you use a lot. Sometimes you can't just trim the front off, or you're trying to, get a piece in the middle here for some reason or another. You just hit C, it takes you directly to your razor tool. You don't have to go up here and click it. The letter V, the same thing. Now you've went ahead and cut the clip. So now you want to go ahead and hit V, and it brings your move tool up. And that, working between those two is probably the functions that I use the most. And so Z clears a clip. Let's put it back. And then X ripple deletes. So now when I hit X, this clip's going to disappear, but it's going to also bring everything behind it up. See? All this other stuff, you can definitely program it to do things that you may find yourself doing often, but in my workflow, that's where I keep everything, is right there, and those are my main commands that I use. Probably 90% of my workflow involves those keys or the space bar. And make sure your space bar is toggled to be the play and stop function for your keyboard. So you hit your space bar and it plays, you hit your space bar again and it stops. It should already be set that way, but it's very important to be using that space bar because it just speeds things up very, very efficiently.
I have a pretty good iMac. It's not a iMac Pro, but it's about as high-end as the iMac goes before you get into Pro. So when I first started editing 4K video, I didn't expect there to be a whole lot of problem. Whether it's the iMac or it's Premiere Pro or the two working together, 4K footage, and this depends on the device that it's coming from, because some devices work better than others as far as being able to play back the video smoothly. And so when I started looking for a workaround or a solution to the very laggy playback, and it just makes editing just really hard and frustrating, what I found was proxies. And the minute I started looking into proxies, I was intimidated. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to figure this out. And then I had one video that really simplified it for me. And that's what I'm gonna do for you today. I'm gonna simplify proxies. And you can use it on every single video. What it's gonna do is prevent any lagging or issues from happening whenever you're doing your editing in the playback. And so if you don't have the best computer, this is a really, really good way to help speed up your editing process, because you can still use those proxies if you're using 1080, and because you're gonna be viewing the proxy as a much downscaled playback, and that's just going to help your playback as you're working through the timeline go a lot smoother.
So you're like, Mike, why would I need to go to all this work to create these proxies? And what I'm going to tell you is two things. One, these proxies are going to make your editing process run a lot smoother. And two, it's really not all that much work. Getting the first two presets set up is what we're going to do right now. It's pretty simple, but after you do that, it's real easy to use proxies. So this is a 4K clip, 3840 by 2160, and I'm sure you've run into this problem, whether it's with 4K or even regular video footage, depending on your computer and the strength that it has for editing. Let's take a look at the choppiness that comes with 4K, and I have a pretty powerful computer. Okay, here you can see it's all choppy, and even if I reduce this down to quarter, it's still choppy, and that's because we're dealing with the file itself. It's having a problem encoding the actual file, not necessarily the resolution. The first thing we need to do is we need to create a new preset. So we're going to go to File, go to Export, go to Media, and in here, we're going to go down to QuickTime. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're on computer or Mac. We're going to go to QuickTime because basically what we're going to use here is GoPro. And we're going to go with the GoPro, which is a widely accepted, platform and encoder. So we're going to go here to GoPro Cineform 10-bit. I'm going to click that. And inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the quality down to 1 because we're dealing with the image that we're viewing right here, the video that we're viewing right here, not the file itself. All right. And so what we want to do is uncheck the resolution, and we're going to drop this down to, say, 540, which is about 4 times less than 4K. It's going to make this video that you're looking at while you're editing much smaller, much less quality, and therefore it's not going to get all caught up and do that jumping stuff. You want to leave basically everything else as it probably already is. Make sure you're not checking use maximum render quality. Again, we're going for something that's, low quality, not high quality. And instead of exporting or hitting anything down here, you're going to go up here and you're going to click OK and save this as a preset. Save it as Proxy Demo. And we're going to click OK. Okay. We're going to cancel this. And now what we need to do is open Adobe Media Encoder. And what Adobe Media Encoder does is anytime you want to create a proxy, it brings the clip into Adobe Media Encoder, and then it renders out the proxy. And you can see there's 4 that were done previously here. But to create the ingest setting, which is the other part of what you need to create so that you can do this quickly and easily every time you need to, you click this little plus button. What we created a while ago was the export. Now we need to create the ingest. So we create, and it's going to bring up this window, and we'll call it Proxy Ingest Demo. Copy files to destination. Just pick any destination because later on you'll have a chance to change this. So here you're going to go to QuickTime. And here's the part that matters. This is what we just created a while ago. You're going to click this preset and click the export that we just created a while ago over in Premiere Pro. We called it Proxy Demo, so we're going to click that. And that's it. Click OK. And that's all done. So now let's go back over here to our 4K clip. If you want to just do one clip, you only have, let's say, 1 or 2 clips that are 4K or 1 or 2 clips that are going to slow you down. You go to the project window. You have the clip already imported. You right click the clip itself and you're going to go to create proxy. So proxy, create proxies. And it's going to bring up this window. Make sure that you have your proxy selected and then click OK. It's creating the proxy job and it should bring up Adobe Media Encoder. And here you can see it's creating the proxy for that file. As soon as the file's done, you'll have access to use that proxy. In the meantime, what I want you to do is come over here to your program video screen, click the button editor, and make sure that you have this one. And you're probably not going to have it if you have never done this before. So it's going to be up in here, and you're going to need to click it and drag it over into here. And what this does is it toggles the proxies on and off. So if you want to see the full resolution, the full file, you turn them off. If you want to leave the proxies on so it goes smoothly, you leave the proxies on. And that's a wrap. Now we have our proxy created. Let's go back over into Premiere and make sure that our proxies are on. Now you go ahead and edit, you do your color grading and any type of editing you want to do to the clip. And what happens when you go to export the final, project, it automatically goes from the proxy and converts it back to the original file. But basically what it just lets you do is let you edit in a much smoother fashion. And you can check it out now. Watch. No jumping, no lagging. The computer has no problem handling this because it's a low quality file that we're using. It is the active file. And it really doesn't matter what your preview quality is. Let's say you have a bunch of 4K clips that you have all in the same project. So what you want to do is you want to go to this little tool wrench under your media browser and go to ingest, turn the ingest on. And here you're going to want to make sure this says create proxies. So I'm not sure what you'll see when you get to this screen, but it automatically has the proxy ingest that I originally created and use all the time. What you'll probably have to do is click Add Ingest Preset. And depending on whether you're on Mac or Windows, it's going to be a little bit different, but you're going to go to your Adobe folder, which is going to be under Documents on the Mac. And then you're going to go to Adobe Media Encoder, go to the newest version, go to Presets, and then find the preset that we just saved. Proxy Ingest Demo, right there. Click Open, and now you have it. So then go and click OK. And with the ingest button selected, what you want to do is take the files that you want to import into your project, highlight them. That one's already a proxy. Let's highlight these two, and then right click and import. And that's going to bring those files into our project, but watch what happens. If you go over to Adobe Media Encoder, it's already created the one because that's the same one we just used, but it's now creating the proxy for the other, and those files are ready to go in Premiere Pro. So you just drag and drop them onto the timeline, make sure your proxies are enabled, and go to work, and it's going to be nice and smooth.
When you first start editing in Premiere Pro and you're watching videos on how to use Premiere Pro, it can be, a little bit intimidating because so many people do things so many different ways. The big thing here I want to tell you is don't feel like you're locked into doing anything any certain way. You don't have to keep your windows in any specific orientation. You don't have to put your keyboard shortcuts any way that you don't want to. You need to find what works for you. I think the biggest one for me was setting the in and out points of each clip up in the source window rather than dragging clips onto the timeline and editing in the timeline. For me, I'm doing a lot of different clips a lot of times in the same one video file. That gets to be a little bit more tricky when you're setting multiple in and out points up in the source window. If you drag your clip or your entire video file onto the timeline and then do your editing on the timeline, that just works for me better. For me, it's a smoother workflow. Now, if you go and you do all your filming so that each clip is just one specific thing, and like if you're doing B-roll and you make, instead of doing 2 or 3 different shots or scenes inside the one video clip, you do a video clip for each scene or each shot. If you do it like that, setting the in and out in the source window is not as bad. But most of the time I'm taking more than one scene or shot within the same video clip. And so for that reason, I like to just drag it onto the timeline and then do my editing from there.
My next tip for you is this little button here. Okay, so go to the plus sign and make sure you grab the FX. Grab the FX from up here. It's not going to be down here by default, and drag it onto the screen down here where all the active buttons are. And what this does, just clicking this, let me show you just to give you an example. Let's blow the exposure out and just make this so it's very obviously been changed. We've done, quote unquote color grading here. So if you click this FX button now, it's the raw file. It's the raw image from the raw file with none of the the edits or the color grading or the color correction. And what that's going to help you do is it's going to help make sure that your edit runs very smoothly. You can scroll through your timeline without any problems. This is exceptionally good and a great technique, to put your timeline together, do all your edits, do all your color grading, and when you're reviewing everything or going back to make sure the video is ready for export, you click this, and then you don't need to see all the edits and all the color grading. You've already made sure that's all right. But just that final run through, this button is just wonderful for that because it gets you through very smooth. Also, you can drop your quality from half down to an eighth, and that is just really going to help. And these 2 tips are really good for folks that are trying to do a lot of editing on computers that just aren't really up to speed with it. There's a lot of lag, there's a lot of jumpiness. These things will dramatically help you out. All right, so you're on your timeline, and a lot of times we're doing a lot of work right at the edits or the beginning and the end of the clips. So if you use your down arrow, it's going to take you to the very last frame of that clip. Your up arrow is going to take you towards the beginning of the timeline. It's going to just take you to each edit. You see how it stopped on this edit? Click down, it stopped on this edit. Click down again, it stopped on this edit. Click down, it takes you to the next edit. Same thing with up. And it just gets you to those edits, those areas where you're doing a lot of work quickly. Now, if for some reason, and this happens, it's not allowing you to stop, let's say on the clip that's above the primary clip, like it's going from here to here, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and target all of the tracks. That way you can go from clip to clip to clip rather than it just staying on the one track. It doesn't always happen, but if it does happen, just make sure you check your targeting. All right, and so a bonus tip for you. A lot of times you're fading a clip in or fading it out, or you're applying transitions between clips. And what you want to do is you want to zoom in, because usually it's the same for most clips. You want to, depending on how slow or fast the transition is, you want to bring that transition, that fade, that, whatever it is you're doing to transition between clips, you want to bring it in at a certain speed. So you can use your left arrow key, and it's going to take you one frame at a time. If you want to go back, you can use your right arrow key, and it'll take you one frame at a time to go ahead in the timeline. So left arrow key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 frames. And let's zoom in here. Right arrow key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, but let's say that you want to go back 15 frames, because that's a great spot to typically start your transitions. What you're going to do is you're going to hold down your shift key and then hit your left arrow key. And what that did is it took us back 5 frames. And then you can keep your shift key held down, hit the left arrow key again, and it takes you back 5 more frames. So now you're 10 frames back from the end of that clip. And depending on where you want to start your transition, you can go back another 5, you can go back, 20 total frames. And then you can kind of move from there as far as 1 frame at a time. But typically 10 to 20 frames is typically where you want to start your transitions. This is a wonderful time saver because it keeps you from having to, go in here on the mouse and kind of figure out exactly where you want to be. It just gives you a uniform place to start your transitions or your edits.
So that's it. That's my editing tips plus a couple bonus tips. And I hope you got something out of this. I know that these tips really make a big difference in my video editing. So if you kind of work with them and look into them and try to apply them to your style, see what works for you. But I'm pretty sure that some of these tips are definitely going to help most of your workflows if you're not already doing them. I really appreciate you checking out the video. Hopefully this rain don't last too long. I can get back out and do some shooting. I just love to be outside. I love to hike. But when it's raining, it's a perfect day for this kind of thing. I can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for joining me.